And good afternoon and welcome to this special interactive session where we'll be talking all things fashion in conjunction with the 17th Malaysia International Halal Showcase, or better known as Mihas, which was officially launched yesterday. My name is Raj Aria and I'll be moderating today's session entitled Technology and Innovation in Fashion Textiles. And to do that, I have three esteemed panelists who will be sharing their insights on this amazing topic. First, we have the well-renowned Malaysian fashion designer, Dato Abang Saufi, who's also the chairman of the National Visual Arts Development Board and founder of Abang Saufi, whose fashion creations have graced the international runways around the world. Next, we have someone who has traversed the corporate trail and now immersed in the world of academia, Dr. Zuhaili Akmal Ismail, a brand lifestyle consultant and senior lecturer at the School of Arts, Sunway University. Last but not least, our final panelist is Dr. Thomas Ong Poh Shing, the CEO of NanoTextile Sdn Bhd, Deputy Vice President of Nano Malaysia Berhad, who was also recently the recipient of the Future Tech Award 2021 by Cradle Fund Growth Program. Welcome, Dato Tom, Dr. Zuhaili, Dr. Thomas.
Thank you.
Hello.
Good to have you. Good to have you all here today. And of course, welcome to all our viewers watching us live throughout the world, wherever you are. And for your information, if you have any burning questions that you would like to pose to our panelists, feel free to type your questions. I'll be more than happy to address them throughout the session today. Now, before we begin and dive into the topic at hand, let's handle the elephant in the room. The COVID-19 pandemic, something that's affecting all of us around the globe. So before we start, I would like to ask each and every one of you how the COVID-19 has impacted you. Now, we'll start with Dr. Thomas. Given the fact that you and your company are upstream in the fashion supply chain, how has the COVID-19 affected you over the past 18 months and how are you coping with it?
Right. Thanks, Raj. Basically, I think I would say we are the midstream and the upstream. I think in this textile and fashion clothing industry, everyone has the specific time of suffering. I would say we did not really get the suffering at the early month of last year. In fact, we were okay from March up until June. And in October, we have this a little bit of a leeway and a flexibility with all the CMCO restrictions being relaxed. We were able to still breathe until the end of last year, in fact. We feel the real impact starting this year, whereby you really get to see the different logistics problem popping up in our side and also our client side. And so to really manage them is a very challenging time. I think my team and I had gone through the whole of last year being okay and being very optimistic for 2021. But 2021 hit us really hard, but we are really now operating very well. We are at about 60 to 80% capacity currently.
That's great. Very, very promising to hear. And hopefully things will bode better given the fact that we are now entering phase 2 here in Klang Valley as well. So fingers crossed there. Now, Dr. Zuhaili, I would like to get your input from a branding consultant side and as well as a consumer. As you can see, over the past 18 months since lockdown, all businesses, even the brick and mortar traditional ones, have to innovate, have to change their ways in terms of doing business to survive. So from your perspective, what's your take in terms of this evolution of businesses, not only from a business point of view, but from a consumer perspective?
All right. Thanks, Raj, for the question. So basically, due to the pandemic, there's so many fashion brands that have to evolve overnight. Basically, the fact that traditional businesses have to call teams like digital team is the best thing since a slice of bread. Digital should be a cultural behavior at this point that exists within the company itself. Basically, technology is reshaping the fashion purchasing trend in 2020 and 2021. Part of the reason of the whole thing about the ethical fashion, the sustainability is social media and its ability to educate and share stories about brand. there are so many fashion brands out there that are defining their own definition with technology due to the pandemic. Like for example, like the recent one that I still remember, Gucci is partnering with Snapchat, letting customers to try their eyewear using Snapchat filters. We even have like Malaysian-born Paris-based label Jocia who experimenting with virtual showroom in the social media. So these are all the demands that basically the consumer is asking from the purchasing buyer behavior. We also saw a lot across the spectrum, like in the fashion industry, especially with brand or fashion publication like Vogue Singapore, who's not new to tech, and they just launched in 2020 during the pandemic, and they begin with a 360 digital experience in place of their launch gala, where they introduced augmented hologram and basically just by scanning a QR code. And the great thing also for everybody just to check out, if you wanted to check out, I wanted to check out as well, the September print cover for Vogue Singapore, who's next to our country in Malaysia, is a QR code that basically when scanned introduced 2 non-fungible token digital cover. But again, I don't want to go too deep into the technology with the non-fungible token and all that because it's probably going to take another hour. But to tell you the truth, it's a disguise and blessing. I always believe that even though it's a sad time right now with the pandemic and it's affecting a lot of people, but we are evolving as a human being and the consumer are evolving, fashion brands are evolving, and fashion industry are evolving. And change, like Winston Churchill always said, that change is always a good thing. Constant change is the one that defines or separate the innovator or just basically a creator.
Oh, amazing. You have just described where traditional businesses are moving into NFTs and cryptos. So that shows how the world has evolved in the 21st century already. Now, we'll come back to it later during our discussion. Not last but not least, Dato Tom. Dato Tom, you have been in the fashion industry since the mid-1980s, which is almost 4 decades right now. And I'm sure you have been through a lot of ups and downs in your journey. Now, this pandemic, which is a black swan event, which I believe none of us have ever experienced in our lifetimes. Is this the most challenging periods that you have ever faced as an entrepreneur and fashion designer? And if yes, how are you coping through this extremely difficult? Oh, not really good. Then at least we know your resilience. Can you share a bit more about your journey?
I started during in 1985, which was the economic slowdown of Malaysia. I thought I was being clever because I was buying a workshop that was not so expensive. But it was a really, really a huge learning curve for me because I sent things to the department store, then the department store closed down, I don't get paid. I mean, you know, so when you start off with a minus, everything else became a plus. And I think, fortunately, since 4 years ago, I concentrated more on online, rather than having flagship stores, because I had a feeling that, you know, I didn't want to actually be part of the physical too much, because I was getting to a time when I wanted to have more time for myself, you know, like I wanted to travel more where I don't have to be stressed about the work or certain things that I have to handle myself. So I actually went online, and just before the pandemic, you know, like I finished all my collection for Raya, for all the thing, and the only thing that I had a problem was not coming in, because there was no shipping from China, where I do some of my ready-to-wear. But then it was, you know, we were very lucky because we actually, it cost a little bit more, but we managed to get it just by fasting month. So, you know, like the Raya sales is always one of the best for any fashion people in Malaysia. So I actually had so much sales because people were just buying at home. And I learned to be more, my sales were so good that we had to actually do more to add to our collection. And I started to also sell my bespoke items, which became vintage while I'm at home. And I was learning more things. It was a big learning curve, and I'm always a very positive person because I don't like to be the victim, you know, like, so I actually became a solution in this thing just by being more active online, learning different things to add to my craft, you know, and also because I was wearing another hat of being chairman of the National Art Gallery, we tried to find solution for non-working street artists. So, I mean, there were times when we could go to see our gallery in Langkawi. So I was very active actually, and it was very, it was good for the soul actually, because I learned a lot of things. You know, I even tried cooking, because I was actually going online and I said like, oh, I'm going to cook my oxtail. And then I had orders. You know, like, and I just put a price. I said, wow, that's not bad, you know. In half an hour, I was making a profit of 1,000 ringgit. I mean, which is like incredible, you know. It was so shock, you know, like shock and shock, you know. So like,
Fantastic.
you know, so I actually did a few runs like that, but it was just a learning curve, and you know, just to tell us that when a situation arises, if you look at it carefully and you try to put all the positive into it and you try to be part of a little solution, things can actually work.
As they say, adversity builds character, and it's quite clear you have lots of that. So it's very good to see. Now, Dato Tom, coming now to the topic in hand in terms of technology and innovation involving textiles. Now, I understand you have a very strong Sarawakian heritage where you have incorporated innovative techniques by putting the puah kumbu into your designs, which has been quite the rave around the world, something very different. Now, what was your inspiration behind that?
You know, it was 6 years on. I was actually doing my bespoke fashion and all that from 1985. So this was already like 1991, and I really needed to up my game. You know, like, okay, I get inspired by heritage, but I'm not going to put the same old thing again. You know, like, so, and I was invited to do a fashion show in Belgium, and I really wanted to get the puah as authentic as possible. So the only way I could do it was using knitting rather than doing a silk screening, because it's just a motif and it's not very alive, you know. And at that time, you don't have digital, you don't have the nanotechnology, you know, like I had to actually physically go and look at department stores and find the knitwear. And I said, where is this from? It's made in China, it's made in Thailand. And nobody will tell you where they make their stuff, you know, because people were not very open with their sources, you know. And I actually went to Pakistan, I went here, I went there, and I went to look, and I asked the staff, I said, where do you get this? And in the end, I had to look at, you know, Yellow Pages it's not around anymore, but I had to
Google
Yellow Pages, and then I found one that said it was in Ipoh. And I called this factory, and then like, and then they said like, oh yeah, you know, like we do things. We drove to Ipoh immediately because I just had to find someone who can do this. And of course, when you do this thing, they don't want to do it for you for just one design. It has got to be profitable for them, because, you know, you got to change the knitting system and everything. But I was so insistent, and this old man who owns this factory was I think I was just begging him. I was just saying that I really want to do this. Can you do it for me? And I think I charmed him a bit. I brought food, you know, like went out. And I think in the end, he was so sorry for me. He said, okay, I'll do it for you, but you got to order at least 60 pieces. I said, of course, I'll do it, you know. So then he did the thing, and 2 weeks later, I actually have knitwear of puah kumbu, which was so alive. And like, you know, so I did 16 looks with 60 pieces only, 16 looks. You know, I tell you, bless that man. He really was the person that started the fire for me to do this. So I went to Belgium, and there were lots of other designers there. You know, I had to compete with someone like Anne de Melista. She was the biggest craftsman in Europe then. You know, like there were like very good European designers, especially from Belgium. They actually have very good designers like Dries Van Noten and all that. But I actually brought this knitwear with this really bright colors and a very good story to tell. I was telling stories about Borneo, the romance of Borneo, the romance of how this weave takes months and years to actually appear, and you have got to go and wake up at 5 in the morning to get the dye, to actually have spiritual dreams about this thing, you know. So I actually had them in knitwear, and the stories were just wonderful. And this thing looks very good on blonde models and also on a black model. And, so I was playing with colors and telling the stories, and it was very successful. So, I mean, it was a starting point for me to do this thing with innovative textile, which people were just using it for khadis in plain colors, So I actually had motives with it, and to make it cheaper, because Dr. Thomas, you can't just do it for someone and say like, okay, how many colors do you want? I mean, because it costs money to actually do these things, So I actually said, okay, can I do 4 colorway? And he said, okay, for you, okay, because I think you really want this to succeed. And I'll order all from you if I get good orders, like I promise in the world to, like you have to be like that sometimes with doing samples. So I actually joined them together, and they started to call me, especially some reporters from Southeast Asia, they started to call me the Missoni of Malaysia, because I joined the fabric together, so they become stripes, so there were stripes of things, so I can have different colors, And Alhamdulillah, it was well received, and of course, you can write on certain other big names already, because like it was very Missoni, but I had the DNA of Southeast Asia and Borneo, and also Armani also had a collection of ikat, so like it became the fabric of the must-have for the moment. Yep.
So Dato, the rest, as we all know, is history thereafter, and it grew from there. Now, you mentioned a very important word earlier, which is nanotechnology. Now, nanotechnology is a buzzword that we've been hearing in recent years, and we see it in automotive, we see it in medicine, we see it in food security, and we even see it in textile. So, Dr. Thomas, given your background in chemical and engineering as well, could you just share with us a bit more in layman terms, what is nanotechnology and how does it apply in textile?
Right. So basically, nanotech is not new. I think the buzzword has been around for a while now, for I think a good 6-7 years. In fact, the breakthrough was started in early 2000 and going into the application and the commercial side starting at the late 2000, and then we have the real application, like what you said just now, correct? We have seen many applications, namely on technology. But at the layman term, nanotech is pretty much just like a strip of hair. If you were to divide it into 1 million times, that's just so small, how small a nanotech or a nanomaterial can be. And if you guys have watched Ant-Man, then you know that at a nano world, you can do wonders. There's so much of possibilities that you can actually expect out of nanotech. So I wouldn't say all technologies are attributed by nanotech, but nanotech certainly give a lot of possibilities. And if I can just plug a few of technologies that you have heard of, or you may have heard of, like UV resistant, anti-static properties, antibacterial properties, odor control, water repellent. These are all the technologies that are attributed by nanotech. So basically, what I wanted to actually help, and I always have been saying this, I want to help local fashion brands and local retailers, local manufacturers to embrace functional textile manufacturing. And this is the only way that we are able to up our value chain and be competitive and be a new range exporter.
Right. So it's quite clear, Dr. Thomas, what you have just described here is on the functional aspects, to make it more comfortable, to make it more functional in our daily use. And while obviously Dato Tom, where she comes in is the creativity, the innovation in terms of making it attractive. Because we are human beings, we of course like colors, we like vibrancy, things that we can relate to. And I guess Dr. Zuhaili, from a consumer's perspective, that's very important. So you have to merge the functionality as well as the individualistic attraction in order to entice the consumer. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Hearing Dato Tom as well and meeting her, because she's like one of the best storyteller in Malaysia. Apart from like the late Yasmin Ahmad, Dato Tom is a great storyteller, especially her collection with Raya got inspired by the butterfly. I remember that's one way of telling a story, and especially merging all of this, especially after the pandemic and all that. especially with technology. For example, like social media with Instagram. Instagram is now a driving force in the fashion industry and paving the for new trends and fashion inspiration. I remember going through that Tom Instagram, and basically all of this just setting the trend-setting powers and showing no sign of slowing down at all. While previously we relied on fashion magazines, celebrities, and TV just to push out styles and trend, now people and the consumer are basically following Instagram, and Instagram let them to be free to engage, follow, or even start a trend. And many popular fashion brands actually already started like a shout out Instagram section on their website, and also feed posts and perfectly curated lookbook. Just to quote a little bit, there's just a little bit statistic on how the whole technology is merging and the consumer part and the storytelling itself using social media. According to the Digital 2021 Global Overview Report, basically the social media users in the world are around 4.20 billion, and 86% of Malaysia total population are active social media users. We are ranked number 5th in the world after UAE, South Korea, Taiwan, and the Netherlands. And basically all of this kind of play part into the consumer buying with the technology and all that. And it's great, especially we can see from the 3 panels, we see how Dr. Tom is giving the insight from the fashion industry, and then Dr. Thomas is giving an insight from a manufacturer and also from just the factory itself. And we can see all of this is telling their stories in a different form. So all of us, what we are trying to do over here is that we wanted to make sure that the industry is evolving and serving the consumer better, hopefully.
Okay. It's quite clear that the internet and of course social media and so forth technology has been a game changer. Now you could have someone who is a micro business in Kota Baru can able to find customers halfway around the world in New York or in London and wherever. So it's a whole new changing ballgame. But here's a question I'd like to pose to all of you. While it has leveled the playing field, as we can see, similarly as well, is Malaysia in the right spot to be able to tap that opportunity? Because on one hand, on one extreme, our cost, we don't have the economies of scale in terms of production or cost-wise. On the other side, we don't have the high value, traditional high value essence like Italy or France from a fashion point of view. So we are somewhere in the middle, so neither here nor there. So how do we leverage social media, the internet and technology to be able to propel our Malaysia onto the world stage? Dato Tom, you already have a taste of this by being abroad, by immersing yourself overseas. So what is your take on this? Where does Malaysia stand in the bigger scheme of things?
In terms of, I can only speak for my own DNA of my brand and my designs. And I will also never not give credit to the actual experience of building a brand. Even though now it's all a lot easier, during my time in the 80s, I have to wait 3 months with putting 800 ringgit for one of the magazines to come back, like to see all the other designers in the world and the world ramp before I could actually see them. Because I was always wanting to know what is in the heart, the pulse of the world ramp in terms of colors, in terms of shapes, silhouettes and all that. Because in order to go forward, even though you are inspired by heritage and all the silhouettes that I do, which is like, the saris doesn't have zips, buttons, I do the same. I never have any fastenings in my design because I actually thought about it because I want my brand to be sustainable and to last a long time. And to also like 3 persons can wear the same outfits of 3 different sizes, because I have to think of a woman becoming pregnant and then you have the baby, you lose weight, you have to be easy, you have to be fast when you go out, but still look elegant. And I put all this into the mix. And because of this, I actually only do resort wear, which is like, it's seasonless. And I use silk. That's why when I first started, I just use silk, chiffon, and crepe de chine, because I also wanted to use batik artisan work. And when somebody in a colder climate wears it, they just layer them on so you can keep warm. And when you are where the sun is, you just take one off and you just, wear one single thing, which is diaphanous. And, but I also use to actually use my own physical appearances first, because I did a lot of talks and things, and I'm fortunate enough to be able to actually communicate with people. And I also do a lot of talks in places like London, where I was invited to do things like talk. I have got a talk which I call have sarongs, you can't go wrong. And I put lots of sarongs, I change it around. And, these are things that interest people. And when I did in Asia House, you immediately have 2,000 members who are decision makers in every industry that know of your brand. So I try to do it this way. And then later on now, with the social media, I have thousands and thousands of visuals that I can put out there, which tells stories, which is my own journey. No one can take it away, because you can't find that out through not experiencing it. So I think that helps in putting my brand. Because I remember once somebody switched on CNN and saw the wife of the British Prime Minister wearing my designs.
Wow.
And she was going to an official trip to China, which is one of the biggest population in the world. And she left China with the same outfit to go to India, which is another huge thing. And everyone's calling me and saying, hey, is that your baju on the CNN? So I switched on and said, oh yeah, it's mine. I said, even the accessory is mine. And it's one of those that because when she came here, she actually bought some of my batik work. And because I tell a story, people like to wear a romance, and that's why I use Borneo as my inspiration. It is a huge canvas of so many things I get inspired by. And now after 40 years, I still haven't even touched the surface of what I can get inspired with, and of course, the storytelling helps.
Yeah, definitely. And we look forward to more stories, obviously, many more stories to go. Dr. Thomas, now, with regards to my question earlier, nanotechnology, nanotextile, for example, where do you see Malaysia stand in that regard? And in terms of Malaysia, looking at the fashion industry, are we following behind? What's your thoughts?
Right. So I think, there's always the saying that people have heard, that they are saying that Malaysia, we are losing out. Losing out as in we are more and more dependent to supply from China, from Vietnam or Bangladesh. So this another part, another agenda that I always get, and it's a very sensitive question that I often ask. But I don't really like to actually say that it's wrong to actually source these supplies from the likes of these countries because of the unique economics, because it's cheaper. It's all right, but the advancement of technologies is growing. So Malaysia, we are not losing out. So to compare that, are we at the right track being way forward or losing out? Let's just say we are slower in terms of adoption of technologies. If I were to compare Malaysia to the likes of Taiwan, South Korea, or even certain countries in Europe, these countries, the landscape is a bit different compared to Malaysia. Functional textile with all the properties and technologies that I've mentioned just now, it is actually a minimum requirement by the end customers. It's actually the end customers that actually want these functionalities on the commodity, on the apparel, and on the ready-to-wear garments. But in Malaysia, we are a little bit slower behind. Technology-driven textile is a demand, but it's not up to the extent whereby it becomes a requirement. So in Malaysia, we rely on this some of trend that's going on there at APEC or in Southeast Asia. So NanoTextile, we are here to always try to embrace textile manufacturing to assist these brands. And we always want to believe in this short quote, new range, new products, new exports. So we are not losing out, but we have all the opportunities that is on the table. But what Malaysia will need to do is to start adopting these technologies into their product range and to have a specific collection or specific range that is focusing on technical and functional textile.
All right. So, Dr. Thomas, it's quite clear that this movement has already started taking place in the West, where it's more or less a requirement, but not so much in Asia yet. So, what's stopping local designers, local producers from moving in that direction, seeing that it's inevitable, it's coming, it's just a matter of when? What's preventing them from making the big step now?
So I think this is primarily because of costing. I dare to say that it's primarily because of costing, and because of that, and a lot of fashion designers or fashion brands are very cautious in terms of the decision making. So we have like a big conglomerate fashion brands that has got such a big appetite of risk to cushion on. We even have some small, medium enterprises that have very restricted range of risk management, and they have to be very careful in terms of making some certain decisions. So in NanoTextile, we have encountered and we have collaborated with different range of fashion brands. So I would say, yes, cost is one thing, but the beauty of it collaborating with NanoTextile is always being us being a B2B technology service provider, but we always love to operate ourselves, and my team love to operate ourselves in a very B2C manner. So a lot of our clients are very happy that we are able to actually think on their behalf, execute on their behalf, and strategize, like what Dato Tom said just now, to really strategize together with the fashion brand and see what technology is the most feasible to roll out one by one. So I think cost is the main thing. I do not really know, I do not speak on their behalf, but certainly there are many other business decisions that they would have to think about before they make a decision, before they jump into this bandwagon of functional clothing.
Fair enough. Dr. Zuhaili, now this is a well-known question which I'm going to pose to you with regards to trends, as we can see here. So is it the designers or the brand that drives the trend, or is the trend driven by the consumer? It's a bit of a chicken and egg. What's your thoughts on this?
Yeah, my thoughts, I would say that it's always the consumer that drives the trend in general. But just to connect with your previous question as well, I believe that Malaysia Boleh, we were able to bag 3 goals at the Tokyo Paralympics. Obviously, Malaysia are evolving for sure. We have seen that Malaysian designer, the fashion industry, yes, we are behind a little bit compared to other countries. But the one thing that all Malaysians have is that perseverance. And we always have a story behind our brand, like Dato Tom. Dato Tom brand story basically bring joy to people, that emotional connection that most fashion brands around the world don't have, and the culture that kind of fuse and the fiber of it. I do believe that basically consumer is driving the trend and use it as inspiration for the content, especially like, for example, with the Instagram and all that, with the algorithm is always changing, and digital and social media itself is not static and keep transforming. So you need to be on top, especially for fashion brand, to capitalize that on consumer engagement. And most fashion brand in Malaysia, we don't have big budget like the big brands like Uniqlo have, or maybe like Zara have, and everything that we do for fashion brand is by ourselves. And sometimes, to tell you the truth, some of the designers, fashion brand, they work till wee hours just to make sure that they get things done. And when things don't go well, they quickly adapt. That's one thing that I noticed, especially with the fashion brand in Malaysia. The perseverance, especially with a lot of learning from the mistakes that we make. Not everything going to work out well. The most important thing, as long as we go along, we try to improve bit by bit. What I would say that most fashion brands in Malaysia are trying to do right now, they are trying to keep exploring new things, trying to innovate, and instead of following. And especially if I can give one advice to Malaysian fashion brand itself, just keep true to your brand value and message you give. But sharing to with all the audience some of the accomplishment of the fashion brand in Malaysia in the digital landscape itself. One of the case study is probably the designer Rizman Ruzaini, who have like 1 million followers. Nilufar have 908K followers. How many? That's a lot. Bella Amara with 867K followers. And if you think about the engagement rate, if you kind of counted the engagement rate, Risma Ruzaini is at 0.30%, which is almost up to the par of some of the fashion brand in the worldwide. So the whole average like per post and impression, yes, we are a little bit behind, but I believe that Malaysia boleh, and one day we're going to see that our Malaysia brand will be able to compete with the international brand or even a big budget brand. That's the beauty of digital media and social media in general, because it kind of like give a outlet for all the designers to tell their story and share it, the joy, and share the happiness to the world.
Fantastic. Yeah, so true. That's basically a tool which anyone can use in terms of reaching out to the masses out there, tapping new markets which you would have dreamed of perhaps 30, 40 years ago, like what Dato Tom said. So difficult in the early days. Now, back to you, Dato Tom, we have a question for you from the audience. You speak of dreams before someone weaves. Is there only a particular group of women or men who can be weavers because of this unique ability?
Yes, the Iban community, some of the shapes and some of the motifs that they have in the Puak Kumbu is actually all so sacred. It is a ritual, and they dream it, and some men are not allowed to do certain motifs, and some women can't do like the dragon or certain thing, because the Puak Kumbu is a sacred fabric, piece of cloth, which is used for marriage, for good events, for burial, for birth, so it is part of the heirloom of the community. So when I actually started to actually do it, I actually had to study and ask the elders of the community to see which one I can't use. Because if you want to be inspired by heritage, you got to learn about it and you got to respect it. And that is the thing that I always do. I always ask specialists, what are the things I shouldn't do? So I always take motifs which is generally allowable. It's the same when I first did my baju kurung, like this is what I always tell other designers. I think this is the things that we have to do, because you have purists who they don't even want zips. I mean, I don't use zips, but then you got to sometimes go into the practical, because you got to go and take things from the museum into the street. That is how I do my stuff. But so I put elastic in them so that they can be worn quickly. So it still looks the same. So we just put the pleats on the side sewn in, But I remember, because I met a very person who was full of knowledge about the baju kurung and the baju kebaya, and we were going to do a show together in Italy, and I knew she will never want zips on things and all that. But a week before that, what I did was I went to visit her, and I said, you are the only person I'll ask for advice as a point of reference for some of my designs. Because I said, if you can teach me the correct way, and this is the way I want it to go, so that young people will actually wear my designs, I hope you don't mind, and teach me how to actually do it. She said, Tom, I like what you are doing. Please just do it, because at least you are teaching young people. There's always ways to actually combine this thing by just not being offensive. And I think I do a lot of this in the journey of things. And that's why when you just want to copy something or get inspired by something, you must actually know it before you simply just do it in the digital show workshop or something, because you might offend certain community or things like that. And that this is the thing about IP also, because I'm inspired by something old and it's created by someone else and dreamed by someone else. Am I going to say that it's mine, my design? You can't, because I'm only inspired by them, So this is why sometimes when people tell me like, oh, do you have IP for this and all that because I saw someone doing it? I said, no, everyone's inspired by everyone else. It's all right, So that's the journey of things that sometimes when you do work, you want to be successful, but I think you also have to do it correctly.
Well said. You have to be authentic. Dato Tom, well said indeed. There's another question here from Les Au, and this one I'll post it to Dr. Zuhaili. How do you see Malaysia's potential in Islamic fashion on the global platform? Obviously, this is done in conjunction with Mihas, and we know that there's a massive market for modest fashion out there. What's your thoughts on this?
Yeah, thanks for the question to Leslie Au and also Raj. Well, it is common knowledge that Muslim majority countries, especially with the whole modest clothing, have a high demand for modest fashion. We can see that basically in the industry itself, if I'm not mistaken, the statistics probably almost there. The spending for the modest fashion in general in the whole world is almost like $283 billion. And then in Malaysia itself, Malaysia is ranked number 4, if I'm not mistaken, in the world for modest fashion. And we are defining, especially in Malaysia itself, a lot of people are looking at Malaysia market because we are studying a lot of trends, and basically estimated 1.1 million of Malaysians actually kind of attracted to the modest fashion itself. And the modest fashion in Malaysia is bringing the whole name of Malaysia. Imagine like almost like the Olympics, like how our athletes are bringing the name. The Malaysian designer are bringing our name because of modest fashion. And I think the outlook is pretty bright because we have a lot of young designers, even like seasoned designers who have done amazing thing. Because all these designers, especially like at Tom, we have like Rizalma, who have paved the ways for the young designers, especially on the modest fashion, to be able to experiment and innovate. Like such a brand like Lilith brand, we have a lot like Mimpi Kita, we have a lot of these local brands that are evolving and trying new things. And I do believe that it's a great outlook. And especially what we're trying to do is that we're trying to bring a story. It goes back to the whole brand story, the fashion collection, and fashion designers, especially with the fashion brand, are great storyteller because they were able to make something beautiful at the same time also trying to play the emotional connection with each one of it, the whole DNA of fashion. Because to think about it, yes, we are as Malaysian, food unite us, but fashion actually unite Malaysian as well. And modest fashion obviously going to put Malaysia in the map, like how our athlete was able to put Malaysia on the map. Modest fashion, basically Malaysian designer will put modest fashion on the map for us as well.
Fantastic. Yeah, we can see the immense potential there, which leads to the next question, which ties in very nicely, which I'll put it to Dr. Thomas. Now, we know modest fashion means wearing more fabric in order to achieve the modest look. Now, of course, the issue of breathability, and we live in a warm climate countries as well. So does nanotechnology have a big part to play in terms of bringing the two together, the modest look as well as the functionality aspects of it? What's your take on this, Dr. Thomas?
Right. So before I could perhaps jump into the answer straight away, back then I would like to get our fellow panelists and also those who are present in this seminar that, in 2016 we were more in medical textile. The technology that we have, the background technology that we have has been with us since the mid-2000s. And we tap into the market because we realize there's this vast potential that we can actually give to clothing segment. Besides clothing, we have this automotive, industrial, home textiles, and medical textiles. Clothing textiles is actually a big segment by itself. We are talking about sub-segments like the modest clothing, kids wear, sportswear, and so on and so forth. So back in, I remember still the breathable technology that first came out in early 2012. Basically, it's just how we actually, the brand like Nike and Adidas, trying to make the marketing stint to really promote breathable and lightweight technology. So basically, in 2012, there were no IPs. There's this file in 2012 or 13, but they were playing around with the words that there is basically using less fabric to make it more breathable. So getting back, in contrary to modest clothing that is using a little bit more fabric compared to other contemporary fashion, we have this technology that is temperature regulating, that is certainly helping modest fashion wearer and community in Malaysia in order to assist them to ensure that the clothing becomes more wearable compared to other communities. So the technology are certainly there. It's just the way how we are able to really match them both together and tell a good story in your marketing strategies. That is something that I personally believe in, because we have had several modest fashion brands that have been working with us already, and we always like to collaborate, partner, and read how they actually read their customers' mind. And we always have to proofread what are the disclaimers and what are the sexy language to really reach out to the customers while using our technology. So we love to believe that we are the Intel of many laptop brands in Malaysia, but in the fashion aspect.
Right. Now, you mentioned sexy terminology, for example. I have one here, a buzzword, which is ethical fashion, which we talked very briefly on earlier in this session. Now, of course, we are looking in terms about sustainability, protecting Mother Earth, in terms of workplace environment, fairness in pay, as well as various ethical aspects. So with regards to NanoTextile, is it sustainable? Does it have a smaller carbon footprint? Does it involve less resources? What's the insights onto that?
Right, so basically sustainability is actually a big word. So let's admit it. People like to use it in their posts, in their professional media, in their social media, just to get people on board with whatever they have in terms of offerings. So there's such a misusage of this particular word, and we have these brands like H&M started with the reused fabric, and people are starting to debate: are they really sustainable? Are they just using the technique of greenwashing to get people starting to buy their products and their clothing? So are there any fashion brands really abusing the word sustainability? Or if there isn't, are they really using the real 100% reused, recycled fabric? And last but not least, are they really functional? So there's no doubt, right? Like what I said, H&M started it off in early 2018 and 19. But the real gist of sustainability actually comprised of 4 pillars: the manufacturing, the processes, the lifespan of your products, and the chemistry behind the manufacturing. So we would like to assist the brands out there to really strike and tick on the chemistry. So because technology is certainly one of the sustainability efforts out of 4 that I mentioned just now. So having the capacity to use functional technologies with zero toxicity and environmentally green and non-polluting is certainly one of the efforts in promoting sustainability. So this is something that we can assure of working with all the brands out there.
Okay, brilliant. Very quickly, still on you, Dr. Thomas, because we have a question directed to you. Can we expect more from NanoTextiles in the near future, or is there anything interesting or innovative that is in the pipeline that's being developed?
Right. So I would like to cite what Dr. Tom said just now. It is always being very positive. Try to be very positive at all times. So I would like to really believe in 2022 would be a very good, another great stories. We have great stories in 2019, started off with good kidswear, functional clothing, working with Pony. We have several sportswear brands out there working with us in 2020. We have several, I would say, up to 10 modest clothing line that is working with us now. And to answer your question, things are very exciting. I would like to get excited by all these exciting collaboration. What to expect in 2022? Certainly, there are already pipelines of several collaboration. I can't wait to actually disclose them. But I think the thing is, because I always say that we are the Intel of many laptop brands out there. But most certainly, I'm very happy. I'm already very happy and glad to see my client, my partners, fashion brands that are successfully launching their products with our technology. We are already very happy on their behalf, and we don't need to be at the front line to get the limelight. As long as they are able to enjoy a good sales with our technologies, that's good enough for me and my team.
Yeah, fantastic. It's all about a win-win situation at the end of the day. Dato Tom, as you mentioned, telling a story is so important, which you are brilliant at doing. in the pipeline as well, or for Tom, Abang, Saufi? Is there anything interesting or innovative that you look to incorporate in terms of a textile point of view? Like previously was Puak Kumbu. Anything else that we can expect?
For the last 6 years, I've actually been looking at alternative fabric. Actually, until I knew that Nano with Dr. Thomas, I didn't know that I could get them in Malaysia, honestly, until somebody actually told me, and then I was going to do this conference with him. I'm so glad because I've actually contacted him because, of course, I want to get into the new technology of fabric and all that. But, you know, as designers, sometimes we don't know where they come from, and and it costs you money to actually do samples or for them to actually do things for you. Of course, you know, I've been searching for the anti-order fabric for so long, and now I really know that it can be done. You know, like I want my innerwear to actually be like anti-odor and like easy to wash. I mean, easy maintenance. I mean, you know, all this. I've been thinking about this, of doing this collection for at least 4 years, ever since I've gone more online. And you know, and of course, you know, like there's stretch in it. There's like, especially with the pandemic, you know, you really have got to have fabric that keeps you healthy, helps you from getting a virus, anti-mosquitoes. I mean, people forget that because of COVID, they forget that dengue is one of the biggest killer. You know, so you have to have all these things. And, you know, and of course, for traveling, I want lighter fabric. I want something that I've been always using chiffon, which is very light. So I've been traveling well for the last 15 years, actually, since I've used lots of that. And, you know, so that's the way it should go now, you know, and I'm glad that we can do it right in our doorstep, you know. And I mean, because I've been talking to Taiwan, I've been talking to China, I've been talking to a lot, but I've had samples, but it was small samples, which I can't really do much with because I also want to print my motif on it, you know. But and that's why since 4 years ago, since I went online, I've started to also be involved. We are talking about the green movement. You know, I've always been doing batik because I want to champion the artisans. But, you know, batik is actually not healthy. Silicate we use is damaging the earth. You know, so that's why in the last 4 or 5 years, I've actually done more digital with poly fabric, which is now very comfortable actually. So, you know, since I started that, I've actually like done less batik, but doing more beautiful bespoke batik for my special clients, because you still need to do it, you know, because you got to keep certain tradition alive. But that's how you contribute a bit to not damaging the earth by not using more silicate and also less water. So at least when I do digital, I can get the right colors, and you know, there's less usage of water. I know it's small, but you contribute a little bit to what we should do about caring for the earth, you know.
That's right. Well said. So just to add on to what Dr. Thomas has said and Dato Tom has said, Dr. Zuhaili, where do you see the trends in terms of fashion heading right now? Of course, there seems to be a combination of more functionality, but yet having that storytelling, that creative element inserted as well.
All right, thank you for the question, Raj. So basically, where I felt like the trend would be evolving and all that, as an academician and also as a brand lifestyle consultant, it kind of goes along with the quote from Nelson Mandela saying that education is the most powerful weapon which you can use to change the world. So most of the trend right now you see is trying to educate the consumer, at the same time also to educate themselves as a fashion brand. We see a lot of socially conscious brands, especially in Malaysia, going to great lengths to make sure that its entire supply chain, from growing and harvesting the organic cotton to the final sewing in the process, are responsible and as clean as possible. Well, it's obviously you cannot achieve 100% sustainability like what Dr. Thomas said, but the most important thing, the change always starts with you. My dad always say that don't order something that you cannot pronounce. It's the same thing with like selling with fashion brand. That's one advice I always tell fashion brand. Don't sell things that you don't feel or you don't believe in the value. And now what the fashion brand are doing is not all about makeup. What they are looking is not just about facade. They are looking for the soul. And what fashion brand is doing, instead of focusing so much on the trend, like you know how like TikTok have certain trend, Instagram have certain trend with the reels and the IGTV and all that.
Yeah.
What fashion brand are doing is that they're not following the trend, but they are beating at their own drum beat. That's the most important thing. And the thing is that they are defining their story. They are the director of their story. They are the script writer of their story. They decide what their brand story going to be like. And the great thing about it is that we can see a lot of the fashion brand right now, they are writing great story towards sustainability and just being responsible provider to the consumer. It's long gone the era of just selling things that is not beneficial anymore to the consumer. Like some of the brands that I've worked with, I still remember like Slay Cosmetics. They are trying to empower women. They want the women to be better, not just because they are a makeup brand. Before, makeup brand is all about beauty at the outside. Now they are focusing more on empowering women, saying that basically with the brand, you are able to achieve anything, things that are not possible before for women to do, and they are empowering it. For example, like some of the local brand that we can see, like Whimsical, they are trying to educate women. Basically, what you have to do is that to use material that are sustainably friendly for the environment. Obviously, it's not going to affect much, but at least the change start with you, because we know that Greece was not built one day, basically. So hopefully with the power of Malaysian raising the flag together, we are able to evolve and become a better version of ourselves.
Fantastic final parting words to say. We only have a couple of minutes left. So now I'd like to put it to Dr. Thomas. Any advice that you would like to give or insights you would like to give to other fashion designers, fashion players, as well as fashion consumers out there from your point of view?
Well, I think I dare to say that I have been giving all the awareness, knocking doors to all the fashion brands in Malaysia since late 2015, early 2016. So back then there was a pretty tough journey because people are not, I think it's a curse, people are not buying the word nanotech, you know. Like what Dr. Zuhaili said, you don't order the food that you can't pronounce. So basically back then people are not buying the word. So I'm glad that I think after all these years, perhaps nanotech becomes the buzzword. People are not necessarily promoting their tech using nanotech, like Uniqlo. Most of their tech are attributed by nanotech, but they don't really promote it as being nanotech. But this is something that I would like to advise fashion designers to start talking to us. We are able to think on your behalf. We know what's feasible and what's not, and let's discuss together. We will ensure that the stories, like what Dr. Zuhaili said now, the stories that you want to tell would not be very technical and certainly would reach out to more end customers.
Fantastic. And last but not least, Dato Tom, any final parting words to our viewers?
I just wanted to just tell a little bit of story about Islamic fashion, because for the last 12 years, I've traveled the world bringing Malaysian Islamic fashion to all the top capitals of the world. We were very fortunate to actually have a platform which is called Islamic Fashion Festival, and we actually show Islamic fashion from Malaysia and other parts of the world, even non-Muslim countries and designers, to decision makers of the world. And it was so well accepted because we actually show very user-friendly clothes, and also it was beautiful and it had a very high standard. So it was no more like black or from the backwaters. The fabric we used were fantastic. Even Roberto Cavalli came and was so impressed with it, and and we had really great big personalities of the world that actually said, "Oh my God, I didn't know that Islamic fashion is so attractive," and we were interviewed on lots of television. I was asked, "Why am I using colors when would it be accepted in the Middle East because everything should be black? I said, yeah, but I'm not born in the sand. I'm born in the tropics where I have got kingfishers in my garden. I have beautiful flowers. I said, and if the Prophet had been born in my garden, they would also like allow all sorts of colors to be worn, you know. So those are the things that I think for me, the last word is we must get on with new technology and new things that is, which is like in the last 30 years, in the last 20 years, in the last 10 years, and now in the last 3 years, it's been a really huge learning curve for people like me who's gone to live through the fashion of the 70s, the 80s, and the 90s, you know, but you must always be on top. You must always be relevant. You must always know what is the thing that is actually the relevant thing that is at the moment, whether it's to clean the earth, whether it's to give new colors, whether it's to educate little kids. You know, I mean, we just keep on learning and sharing ideas and learning from each other. That's one thing that has actually kept me very excited about my work, you know. Thank you, Dr. Thomas, and also Dr. Sazali. You know, it's been a really wonderful exchange with Raj here. Thank you.
Indeed it is. And thank you so much for all your stories. And we look forward to hear more about those tales in your designs in your upcoming fashion collection as well. On that note, Dato Tom, Dr. Zuhaili, Dr. Thomas, thank you so much for all your input today. It has been most insightful, and I hope our audience have appreciated your perspective, especially in terms of nanotechnology, different trends that's taking place in terms of modest fashion, as well as all the evolution of technology, social media, the internet, and so forth. With that, we come to the conclusion of today's session. Don't forget, tomorrow we have another session at 11 a.m., same place, and we will be talking more in terms about the COVID-19 pandemic, and of course, modest fashion on the international stage with two guests, one from Indonesia and one from Russia, sharing us their very valuable insights as well. On that note, thank you once again. My name is Raj Aria. Take care and have a great evening. Bye, everyone.
Bye.